Hello, I'm Vicky, aged 84, and in my opinion, what you consider a memorable moment varies according what age you are. For instance, age 4, if grandma gives you an ice cream, that's a memorable moment. Get to 14, in my case, you started youth hosteling, which meant setting off on your bike with girlfriends and staying the night and coming back the next day and then back to school on Monday. And that was memorable, age 14. Age 24, I had a sense of adventure, and whereby I set off on my own and for 3 years went round the world. So that was, I had about a million memorable moments. And then now I'm 84. If I'm down in town doing my shopping and I bump into somebody I know and say, hello, do you fancy a coffee? To me, that's a memorable moment because that's really nice and have a nice chat and then go home. So it varies as you're growing older, in my opinion. It's not a fixed idea. Now, when I was abroad, I'll mention three. Number one, I went to watch the Olympic Games in Tokyo in 1964. They've since done it in 08. And so I was in the country for a month. And then I was going to sail to Hong Kong. And the night before, I was in a park at sunset on a child's swing, in a playground, as you might say. And I was on the swing, just looking at the sea from the cliff and the lovely sky and everything. I mean, I wouldn't dare nowadays. I mean, all on your own, anybody could have been there. And I was just thinking, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next when 3 days later I end up in Hong Kong. As it turned out, it was great. So that's number one. And number two, this was in Italy, in Pompeii, which was covered with volcanic ash. I've lost track of what date. We'll say AD 72. I do not know. And I should do. And what happened is the whole village or town almost got totally smothered in ash. And they've since excavated and got rid of the ash. And then underneath, there's an entire village with the people. You probably know all this, and some of you might have been. But the memorable moment for me was not looking at all that. It was stood on the grass, and there was loads of grass, thinking, aha, I wonder what's underneath my feet. A bit more of the town, as you might say, because they haven't excavated the whole lot. There's loads of it never been touched. So I was just wondering who was beneath my feet. And then number three is a memorable moment for maybe in 2 or 3 months' time, because 45 years ago, I started to write a textbook called Spelling for Adults. And I wrote maybe a quarter of it. And then since then, it's been in a cupboard, as you might say. Anyhow, about 3 years ago, I came across it and I thought, you have a choice. You either bin it or finish it. And like an idiot, I decided to try and finish it. So it's cost me way over £2,000, paying my typist £10 an hour to type it up because I have no computer. And ideally, within the next 2 or 3 months, it'll be on Amazon for worldwide access for anybody. And it's called Spelling for Adults. And really important people, very educated. For the life of them, there might be only one word and they just haven't a clue how to spell it. Might be the word friend, and they get it wrong every time and such things. So that's a memorable moment that's coming, hopefully. All the best. Thank you.
I think the earliest one is when my little brother was born. He'd been in Birmingham, and I knew was being born. And Mum had gone to a nursing home, came back in a taxi, and stopped outside the front door and sort of waved. And she had a bundle. And I thought, oh, might be nice. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl at the time. So she came up the stairs because my bedroom was over the front door looking out onto the road. And she said, here we are for you. And it was my brother. So I thought that was a lovely way to introduce him, And I just was enraptured, for months with this little sort of toy, really, to play with. So that was when I was about 5, something like that. And then after that, I remember going to Henry, no, my grandmother and granddad, we lived with them. And before my dad came home, I didn't really know my dad at all. And then someone said, I think he's coming home today. This was from the war. So this was very, very exciting. Because, I didn't know what he was like or anything. I was so excited. Anyway, across the road was a dairy, Hansworth Dairies, and a shop which had a glass door. And my grandma and I were in the shop, and the lady in the shop said, "Is your daddy coming up the road?" So, oh, he's coming. And he got his arm in my mum's, linked with my mum, and they were waving and coming up there. Oh, wonderful. Anyway, apparently I ran straight across the road, but there was no traffic in those days, because we're talking like 1945 or 6, something like that. And ran straight into his arms, which is just like the railway children, isn't it? Where's my daddy? And he picked me up, it was just wonderful. And then we went into my grandma and granddad's house where we lived, and he got a big kit bag. Kit bags, one of those white things. And he opened it up, and in the top was a little Greek doll, and he said, "That's for you." And that was when my sort of love affair in Greece began, because I've always loved Greece so much. So he said, "That's for you." And then he told me the story of how, when he was in Crete, and there was this battle, and they had to get off the beach quick because the parachutists were coming in, run over the mountains as fast as they could to get the Australian boat at the other end. And he made sure he got this little doll, so he got it safe in the kit bag. And when he got to the other side, there was the big Australian boat, and they were all climbing up the side, which was very difficult because it was very steep, and they put a sort of net over, but the rope on the net was thick, and they couldn't get their fingers round, and lots of people fell off. And that was it. But he managed, it's just, look at him. He just managed to keep his fingers round the rope and climb up. And he said that was one of the best moments of his life, when a big burly Australian got hold of him and said, "You're all right now, mate," pulled him onto the boat. And then they were off to Egypt then. So that was sort of my first memory, which is sort of war, really. It's a shame. So that was that bit. And then finished with the war then, and came back, and was very keen on Shakespeare, so we were going to go to Stratford. But on the way, as we lived in, it was Henley in Arden, which before the war was famous for ice cream. And Dad said, "Would you like an ice cream?" I had no idea what an ice cream was, no idea at all. Anyway, he gave me this funny thing. And he said, "There, what do I do with it?" He said, "You lick it." So there's a photograph in the album, me licking this ice cream. I said, "I like it. It's very nice." So that was an early memory as well. And then time burbled on a bit. And then I got older, and it must have been 1948 by then. And Clement Attlee came to Birmingham Boring. And this was the beginning of the health service. And I can remember my dad took me, and the noise was tremendous, the cheering and the clapping and everything, because suddenly you didn't have to pay. And I can remember Clement Attlee standing there. He was very small, and he had quite a quiet voice as well. Anyway, after that, I wasn't very well at one point, and my grandma took me to the doctors. Paddy sort of did and said, "You're all right now, and okay, you can go now." And I remember my grandma leaning across the desk saying, "It's wonderful not having to pay." So that was a historic moment. So I'll say those few years going to be, you know, from 1940 to 48. There were so many important things happening. So that's sort of the end of the little memories of boy for housewives, but still. Then what happened then? Then we move on to school, and we had to do at school. We had to learn sonnets and things, even at the age of 11. So I remember having to stand up on the stage of the school, you know, we all went one by one, and say a sonnet. And I knew, because I liked it, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And, you know, everybody had a different sonnet. And the other week, at an art club I go to, the woman there, she said, does anybody know a poem? I said, well, I know a sonnet. Go on then, say it. Now, I said, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? She said, that's lovely. And then I saw her again 2 days ago. She was with her friend. And she said, will you say that poem again? Well, I think I'm going to keep saying this poem. But I thought I would actually buy her a book of sonnets because she suddenly got interested in them. So that was a good thing. Then we'll move on. The next thing that was quite scary was I used to go to the Minster, and when it was Advent, they went through some lessons, and different people read different lessons. And now this was at the front of the nave, standing up on the pulpit thing, and no one in my group wanted to do it. So somebody said, well, can you do it? I thought, well, what have I got to do? Read this. And it was the people that walked in darkness had seen a great light. And I like that. I said, right. So I had to sit in the congregation at the front, and all the lights were off, except the candles. And then the verger came and fetched me, and I had to walk up, you know, and look at the whole Minster like that, which was full of people, and read it. But I quite enjoyed doing it, because you read it. I couldn't possibly remember it. And people remember that. They say, did you like doing that? I said, well, did you? Yeah, because it was easy. You know, that was all my sort of childhood and growing up. And then the rest of my life hasn't really been full of memorable things at all. You know, it just was on. And then the last thing, I think I've said enough. The last thing was, I thought, oh, I'll go somewhere. And the first thing that came to mind was Elsinore in Denmark, where Hamlet took place, because I love the play of Hamlet. So I went into the travel agent in Parliament Street, and I said a very silly thing. I said, I'd like to book a holiday. She said, you've come to the right shop. So I said, where do you want to go? I said, well, I'd actually like to go to Elsinore. Oh, yes, she said, get easy, Denmark. Yeah, I'll book it. You sure? Yeah, absolutely positive. So she booked me the flight to Copenhagen, a hotel by the station, told me I could then get the metro to Elsinore, which has got a different name, but there we go. And had 3 days. And I remember the first day I thought, no, I'll not go because I'll save it, you know. It's too exciting to go on day one. I'll go on day two. So I got on the train, and there was a man opposite, and he said, I'll tell you when to get off. That was nice, wasn't it? So I got off, and there on the station was a huge frame, picture frame, enormous, with flowers all around. And we went behind the frame, and in the background was Elsinore Castle. So it was such a good idea. I thought they could do that here on stations, really. It's a great idea. And then I thought, no, I'll still save it, you know. So I had a cup of coffee, but it's by the sea, of course. And then went up to the castle. And I sort of can't remember ever being so excited. Because we were told at school, try to go to Elsinore when you grow up. I mean, I was 18 then. No, I'm 84 now. So I've waited a heck of a long time. Anyway, went on in, and there were 30 of us all together from all over the world, all gathered together. And the guide said, it is funny, she said, loads of you come from England. Why do you come? I said, well, we like Hamlet and we want to be on the battlements. Oh, right. So we wandered all around the castle, and it was just as wonderful as I hoped. And I come to the battlements, no ghost, fortunately. And then what happened then? She said, "Okay, well, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now, when you get home, you've got something called YouTube. You'll find a film of Hamlet with Christopher Plummer, and it's filmed here. So you'll be able to remember it all. Now, I haven't been able to work it yet, but some said, oh, yeah, you see the staircases and the bathroom. So I can live that forever once I know how to do it. And that was last November. Well, I don't think anything exciting particularly has happened this year yet, but we shall see.
Hello. I just want to talk about two memories that are prominent in my mind. The first is from 1987, when I was 22 years old, and I was doing voluntary work at the old York Film Theatre that was based at the University of York. As well as showing current releases, they also showed the classics and had special showings. And one of these special showings was of the 1925 Russian silent film, the Battleship Potemkin. Now, this is the cover of a DVD release. Now, it's for those of you unfamiliar with the Battleship Potemkin, it's Sergei Eisenstein's dramatization of a mutiny that occurred aboard a Russian warship in 1905. And it's because of its use of montage and because of its use of cinema techniques, which such things as aerial shots, tracking, and also the use of editing as well, is seen as one of the key films that's not just of the silent era, but also of the whole of cinema. Now, as well as so. We were showing this silent film with a full orchestral accompaniment. And this took place on Monday, the 23rd of November, 1987. I was helping out that night, collecting tickets, and it was quite an event because I'd never seen a silent film with a live orchestral accompaniment. They were also playing Edmund Meisel's original score. Now, we only had 150 people in the audience. I think the weather was bad that night. This was immediately after the Great Storm of October 1987, and we made a loss that night. But on the other hand, seeing the film on the screen, hearing the live orchestral accompaniment, especially in such scenes such as the massacre on the Odessa steps, where the supporters of the mutiny are slaughtered by the Imperial Guards, with people hastily running down the steps, the soldiers firing into them, shocked expressions, and most memorably, a pram with a baby in it bouncing down the steps itself. And another memorable moment I felt was at the end, when Potemkin steams out to meet the Russian fleet, and the tension is built up not just by the editing, with shots of the engines going at full power, orders being given, the sailors bracing for action, and most memorably, the guns being positioned ready for fire. And accompanying this is a continually pounding percussive beat. I don't know if you can hear this, but it went, which just continues and continues, building up the suspense. And I will never forget that. And now the second memory I have, I take it you've all know of Haworth, where the Brontes lived. Well, I first visited it with a friend in 1987, and as well as visiting the parsonage and walking on the moors and seeing the graves of Charlotte and Emily and Branwell and their father in Haworth Church, it's also where the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway is based. That's a preserved steam railway that served the cotton mills in the valley. It was closed in the 1960s, but volunteers reopened it again several years later, and it has also been used for many film and TV shows, which I'll come back to shortly. But I made regular visits to Haworth between 2002 and 2012. And one year in 2005, which was the summer I turned 40. I didn't turn pretty, I just turned 40. It was a very nice summer, warm, with clear skies. And they used to run regular vintage trains, that is getting out rolling stock dating from the period, and also locomotives dating from the period as well. And one day in July 2005, when I was visiting there, I decided to try and take a photograph of the vintage train as it was coming past from the footbridge over Haworth Station. And this is the shot that I got. Now, I hope you can see it.
Yeah.
But this was of the engine coming through the station on its way to Oxenhope to pick up some other carriages. And as you can see, it was a clear summer's day, clear blue sky. The light was perfect, and I just managed to get the train in a nice clear shot.
Classic.
There we are.
Classic.
And I don't want to be the man who continually shows you all his holiday photos, but I found these as well. This was a photograph of the same engine being prepared for the day in the engine yard at Haworth, and I just took a photograph of it as it was blowing off steam before it set off. And sometimes on the vintage train days, they would have a brass band playing, and in this year, the band was situated at the railway's headquarters at Keighley and Worth at Keighley Station, and I took this photograph of the band with tourists and passengers listening. The band are in the red jackets and making a nice contrast with the red telephone box. And one particular, and I also liked this amongst the people listening was this mother with her holding her young child, who was also traveling on the train. So those are the two memories that have stood out in my mind. And as I said before, Keighley and Worth Valley Railway has been used for a number of films and TV shows, most notably for the 1970 version of The Railway Children, which, as you know, starred Jenny Agutter, Bernard Cribbins, and Dinah Sheridan. And if you're interested, it's on TV today, and if you miss it, it'll be repeated again on BBC4 this Thursday. So that's a plug for the film. I've finished now. Thank you very much.
I'm Diana, and I've just thought of an incident which occurred some 70 years ago, and I thought you might be interested in it. I was a teenager at the time, and 3 friends of mine and myself, we decided to go to France. We had been traveling around Britain on a number of occasions, and we thought that going to France would be terribly interesting and very exciting for 4 teenagers. So we made the various bookings. The company we flew with was called Channel Airbridge, and they were brand new, and they had a brand new terminal at Gatwick, and we were going to land in Calais some hours later. Things took a lot longer in those days. So one of the group had a brand new motor car, and the idea was that we were going to go on what was called the Great North Road in those days, which is now M1 or A1. So we all piled in this car, and we drove down to Gatwick. Took hours to get there, which of course it would in those days. And we got to Gatwick and we booked in. And because the airport was brand new, the various executives were very proud of it. And one of the executives looked on the booking sheet and discovered that 4 of us came from 4 well-known families. So they thought they would give us the VIP treatment. So the executive came along and introduced himself and said, I would like to show you around the terminal, which is brand new, and we've got brand new aircraft and everything is brand new. So of course we were shown around, and we went into all areas of the terminal, which was very interesting. And he took us into what's the area where the flights go up from?
Departure lounge.
Yes, that's it. So anyway, we were on this tour of the airport, which seemed to take quite a long time. And the executive knew that we were booked on flight 219 to go to France. And so he said, plenty of time, don't worry, we'll show you around the airport and we'll get you to your flight in plenty of time. So of course, you know how irresponsible teenagers are. So we put the responsibility on him to get us to our flight on time. So we were shown everything in the airport, and we found that very interesting. And then we went into the conning tower at one side, and we saw a flight going off. And somebody announced that this was flight 219. We were on flight 219. Everybody panicked. And the executives said, don't worry. We've got seats available on the next flight at 6 o'clock. So we'll put you on there. So, of course, as I mentioned, teenagers are totally irresponsible. And we didn't think to ring our parents or do anything like that. So we just carried on as normal, as if everything was perfectly okay. So anyway, we saw a bit more of the airport, and we had a meal. And then, of course, we got to the next flight was available. And we arrived in Calais, and we had a hotel booked there. And we discovered that everything for the hotel was okay. And we just decided to watch the TV news. With TV in those days was very, very new. The screens were no bigger than this, and they were all flickered. Anyway, there was a news flash which said there's been a plane crash in France. And we discovered, bringing a long story short, that the flight was 219 with all people on board were lost.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, we panicked. And the first thing we did was to go back to the hotel and said, look, these are the telephone numbers, will you please ring our parents? So
Yeah.
we were up until all hours of the night, ringing our parents to find out, to let them know that we were okay. Anyway, after that, we had an itinerary planned for the rest of the 2 weeks that we were going to be in France. And we just drove around as if nothing had happened. But that was a very worrying time, particularly for our parents. And to think that we hadn't taken any action when we heard on the 9 o'clock news that all lives had been lost. I shall never forget that. I remember so many things. The executive who showed us around, he had a surname about this long, and it was Spickeldorfer. He was a German, and his name was Mr. Spickeldorfer. And the flight was 219, and lots of little things like that that I shall always remember. But it was, I can't imagine how serious the situation must have been for our parents, and to think that we took no action until well after the event was over.
Wow.
So that's my memorable moment. This is my memorable moment. Now, unfortunately, apart from having poor hearing, I have diminished eyesight as well. So I'll read this as best I can. My memorable moment will long stay in my mind. 8 years ago, I returned to Yorkshire, having lived many years overseas. I stayed with friends while I went house hunting, but found that there were very few smaller houses or bungalows available which were close to York. Luckily, a bungalow in Dunnington came back on the market, and it was just what I was looking for. It had been recently renovated with a small garden and was in the heart of the village. What luck! Friends told me not to hesitate, otherwise it would be snapped up by somebody else, so I agreed to buy it. I had only been in residence for no more than a few days and was still surrounded by boxes when there was a knock on the door. It was Sue, who introduced herself and told me that she was the convener of AWOC and described what AWOC was all about. She told me about something about her organization. Being single with no family, I exactly fitted the criteria of an AWOC, so I joined up. I am unable to attend every meeting due to other commitments, but have learned a tremendous amount about all the various services available to those needing help in later life, which is very comforting. I enjoy the camaraderie of other members, including Sue and Anne, who have become firm friends and neighbors. Thank you.
Well, hello. I'm Sue, and I'm going back to childhood as well. I was very interested in what memory is all about, and if you put it into one of the browsers, you'll find on the web what is memory and where is it? Where is it stored? And it's absolutely fascinating. And you think to yourself, well, what's going on in my brain? And how has this memory stuck in my brain? And I'm 80, so it's stuck in my brain. It gets stuck in your brain. And apparently, if the more you think about it, the more the brain wires itself to that memory, and that becomes a memorable memory. So the other thing I was interested in was the fact that your memories actually form who you are, because they're based on the experiences of your life. And if things stick in your memory, then it sort of sticks in your identity. And I got all philosophical about that. Anyway, so just to start off then, when I was about 7, it must have been 7 years old, my dad taught me how to ride a bicycle by holding on to the back of the saddle and pushing, and then getting to a hill and letting go. And gradually, as the hills got steeper, I learned how to navigate on a bike. Now, at the bottom of the hill was the village shop. And in the village shop, they had a lot of souvenirs and bits of this and trinkets and that. And there was a Muffin the Mule brooch. Now, do you remember Muffin the Mule? And there was this little muffin with its black and white and white and with black spots on. And he was called Muffin the Mule. And I went alone to the shop, having seen this little Muffin the Mule. And when nobody was looking, I took it and went home with it without paying. How old? About 7. And the moral of this tale is that my parents found me wearing this Muffin the Mule brooch and said, "Sue, where did you get this? And when did you get this? And did you pay for it? How did you pay? Oh, yes. And how did you pay for it?" And they gave me a grilling. And in fact, I wanted it. And they said, "You have to take it back and apologize." And the shame of it, of being led by the hand back to the shop and facing the shop owner and apologizing to him and saying, having to apologize to him and giving the brooch back and saying, "I'll never do it again. I'll never, never, never put myself into such shame again. I will never steal anything from anybody ever again." And my parents didn't have to spank me or anything at all. It was the shame of it which has lasted all my life. And that was a memorable moment. And then another memorable moment was fighting in the playground when I was in my sort of about 11 or 12. And if somebody was being bullied or anything, I would fight. I would fight to defend somebody who was being teased or whatever, and I would shove them. I was a big girl, and I would really shove them. And then that actually got out of hand, because then all the little boys would come round and tease me, and I just smashed their heads together. And Rita was also a big girl, so we would stand back to back, and all these little boys, because they were all, I don't know, we were big girls anyway, and we just fought them off. And the teachers told us, "Sue, if you do that again, you're going to be caned." And the next day, the tormenting started again. I was smashed because you can't get the better of me by bullying or anything, because I will fight back, and I'll fight back on behalf of other people. So I was caught fighting in the playground again. And then in the classroom, Mr. Morris got the cane out, and he stood at the front of the class, just sort of doing that. And he said, "Sue, you have been caught fighting in the playground again. Will you come to the front, please?" And I had to go to, hold out your hand. And he really hit it. He really caned me 3 times and said, "Now you can go and sit down and don't ever be caught fighting in the playground again." And again, it's the shame of being, trying to do, of shame of not obeying the rules, and you will be caned. If you don't obey the rules, you will be caned. And I'm afraid that hasn't actually landed, because I must say that I'm prepared to break the rules and risk caning if there is an injustice going on. So was that little thing. And then the third thing is my little, that I got when I was 5 years old, my little dog, my little Davy, my West Highland Terrier, died in my early teens from a dead puppy inside her.
Oh.
And it was a tremendous grieving loss that my little white, who had grown up with me for the last 10, 12 years, she had died from a dead puppy inside herself. And I've often wondered if that's what put me off ever having children, is the dead puppy inside Davy. And the second dog that I learnt something from was Laddie, and he was an Alsatian, and he was a big dog, but he was very, very friendly and responsible and kind and caring. And he would let my white mice crawl all over him because he knew that they were part of my family. And so he would let the white mice crawl all over him. And then one day I was with my mum, and we were out walking with Laddie down a village lane, and there was a flock of sheep in the next door field, and they smelt him and he smelt them, and they started running, and he pushed through the hedge and chased them and brought one down and killed it, and got it by the throat and killed it. And the sheep all ran, and we were shouting and shouting and shouting, "Laddie, Laddie, come back!" And he finally came back through the hedge, and we took him home. And my dad said, "We're in farming country, and the farmer will probably come round." And the farmer came round that night with a shotgun and said, "I'm going to your dog will have to be shot because it's now a sheep killer." So I was in having a traumatic flood of tears and everything. I said, "Please, please, please." And they said, and my dad said, because we were in the RAF, that he would take Laddie to be a guard dog and under police, control, if if that was okay with the farmer. So the farmer said, right, well, I'm coming round tomorrow night if it hasn't been done. And so I went to school the next day. And when I came home, Laddie wasn't there. And so he'd gone to be a police dog, so it was better than being shot. But what did I learn from that? I learned that there are all kinds of losses in your life, and you just have to cope with it. So, and just to finish off on a brighter note, when I was coming back from India, and this is going to when I'm nine years old, going back again, I climbed the pyramids, one of the pyramids, with my father. And what I climbed, like, there we are in the heat of Egypt with the Sphinx looking on, and these pyramids doing their pyramid thing, and the camels doing their camel thing, and the tourists doing their tourist thing. And it was so, it was in 1947, just when we were thrown out of India, when there was partition in India, and we were thrown out of India, and we were on our way home back to Egypt. And the pyramids were still climbable. So I was 9 years old, and George, my dad, said, right, I would like to climb the pyramid. And I said, I want to come too. And so he said, and my mum said, now be careful. And I said, oh, please let me climb the pyramid. Oh, and probably made a fuss. And so he said, all right then. So we climbed this jolly pyramid, and my mum took a photograph of these two little figures on top of the jolly pyramid. And it was, and that showed me that you can struggle and climb and surmount incredible challenges, but you can get to the top and you can succeed in your aims. And just to add another little one there from AWOC, in 2018, after starting AWOC in 2015, because we had the Real People Theatre, we did a show for International Women's Week, and it was called No Kidding, No Kidding, No Kidding, just once. And we did shows of this No Kidding, and it was so successful because it was talking about being an aging without children and the need for support and everything. And we had people telling their stories, and we had nine scenarios, which are still available to talk about, to use as a springboard for what is AWOC all about. And we performed for the International Women's Week, for the City of York Council, the Health and Wellbeing Board, Pushing Up Daisies in Todmorden, which is another festival, University of York Festival of Ideas, the York 50+ Festival, which is on at the moment, the National Pensioners Convention in Yorkshire and the Humber. We did a scene or two then, and then they invited us back to Blackpool and the National Convention, and we took a scene down, and they all said, well, we've never heard of it, we've never thought of it. What is all AWOC all about? So we told them, gave out flyers, did our scene, and they said it was the most lively, because things are usually lively if I'm involved. Anyway, it was a very lively thing. And the final one was a Doncaster mature
action group. And we went over there and we did a scene or two from No Kidding. And that really had great impact. So I'd like to say that my drama training and my life in the theatre has now linked up and has been expressed the group and the campaigning that we're trying to do. It's been a great bonus, a great icing on the cake to say, yes, now let's do a show about it, and then we can take that and share it, spread the word to other people. So anyway, what you do affects your life and your character and your personality and enables you to do things in your life which have impact. So enjoy your life while you've got it, and I hope you make your mark too. Thank you.